Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to go over some very disappointing news. Again, coming out of the Disney camp. Now, before I did a video earlier last week about how Disney was rebooting several Fox properties, including Home Alone, Night at the Museum, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and Cheaper by the Dozen. Now, actually all of those franchises had not had really a major entry in a long period of time, and even the ones that did, many of them were direct to DVD. So to reboot those franchises, even though I think it's probably a bad idea for stuff like Home Alone and Night at the Museum, it's not necessarily something that's going to break the bank. Now they're going into other territories. We have news that Disney is planning a remake of Die Hard, the original Die Hard from 1988. We also have rumors that they are or they are planning to remake the Alien franchise, reboot that, and I'm sure Predator will not be far along after that, even though that has not been rumored or confirmed. But this is becoming very worrisome. Now, when Disney has acquired other properties before, generally if they're rebooting them, they're failed properties. You saw what they did when had the Spider-Man deal. They rebooted him for the MCU, tucked him in there. It's like, okay, that's fine. We kind of get that. But there's nothing wrong with the franchises that are coming in now. Like the Fox franchises, if you're planning on rebooting and quote unquote Disneyfying the Fox franchises, here's the thing: is that Disney's always said before they don't make R-rated films. Now they could publish this through Fox, but the point is that this is not good. This is not a good precedent to be setting at the moment, and the problem is that now you're going after really iconic films, and really the only one that you went after in the last one was Home Alone, and I still don't think that's necessarily a great idea because as I said before, you can't really alter the formula too much unless you make it like super insanely realistic, and even that's kind of dumb. But when you go into other stuff, when you go into Die Hard, don't reboot Die Hard. There's nothing wrong with the original Die Hard. There's nothing wrong with the original three. In fact, I actually like all the first four films. The latest one, not Live Free or Die Hard. That was the fourth one. A Good Day to Die Hard. That was pretty crappy. But the and as related, I didn't mind Alien Covenant, even though I felt it was kind of like a retread of certain things. And the newest Predator was not great. I didn't think it was very good at all, but it was kind of funny in a bad way. But you shouldn't be rebooting these franchises. You shouldn't be announcing like all at once, oh, hey, all these iconic franchises you like, we're going to be rebooting them now. That's not a good look because we've seen what happens when you fully reboot franchises. We saw what happened with Star Wars. Star Wars, you ran it right into the ground. And if you take those franchises off the track and you reboot them, you're just going to piss off the fan bases and you're going to lose people that want to actually watch your properties. And now that the MCU seems like it's taking a downward turn after Endgame, your audience is going to be dwindling. And I know the reason behind this is because they want to promote all this stuff for Disney Plus, because that's really what Disney's priorities are right now. Is Disney Plus is the core priority, everything else is secondary. So they want to fill that with as much content as possible. Now, I don't necessarily think that these reboots would be going directly to Disney Plus. If they did, that would be even worse. But it would not, to be honest, it actually wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. But it would be probably a bad move to do that. But the entire idea is they want Disney Plus to succeed as much as possible, so that they can drive Netflix out of the market, and that they can basically make Amazon obsolete and a few other things, so they can essentially have a monopoly over the streaming services. But there are problems in rebooting these properties. There are significant problems in rebooting these properties, and that is that, first of all, let's go with Die Hard. Let's look at Die Hard. You have an iconic character in John McClane who's been only been played by Bruce Willis in all five of the Die Hard films. You're probably not going to get, if you're rebooting it, obviously you're not going to use him. You're going to use somebody else, and nobody's going to like that. Bruce Willis embodied that character. That's why people liked him, because Bruce Willis was so believable as John McClane. He was the everyman. He was the guy that somehow always found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time. And if you're going to recast that, you're just going to piss people off. It's not going to work. And especially if you're just going to redo the first movie. The first movie has a very, very, very basic plot. It's just a single guy running around a building filled with terrorists, picking them off one by one. That's all that first movie is. And trying to get help and trying to save his wife. That's all it is. And again, it's kind of like Home Alone. You can't do a lot with that plot. You really can't. And if they choose to do this, this is going to be kind of like, even though Bruce Willis was in it, it's kind of ironic. This would be kind of like the Death Wish reboot. You shouldn't do a Death Wish reboot, because now what they did was, instead of taking they took the sequels as a tone, as opposed to the original. The original Death Wish is a very interesting character study that was written by the same person that did, I believe it was uh, Dial M for Murder, I believe was he also did that for Hitchcock. So it was a talented writer, and then the sequels were done by Canon, who they basically just got a bunch of, like, whoever they could pay the least to write those films. Um, but they took that tone instead, and they essentially ruined it. Even though I think that redoing it in a modern day is a bad idea, and given the track record of what Disney has been doing in terms of hiring people on to manage franchises, this is what they're trying to do, and this is another thing that Hollywood has been trying to do as a whole, as studios separately, is the idea that they want franchises. Marvel has they ran Star Wars into the ground. That's essentially a dead franchise. Marvel is going to be on the downward spiral, I think, in the near to mid future. You're going to see a sharp downward turn depending on where they take things from a narrative perspective, and then they're trying to figure out other franchises. Obviously, they have stuff like Toy Story and the Pixar properties that have been gaining the money, periodically. But people are starting to get tired of that. I don't think people necessarily want another Toy Story movie or another Cars movie or another, one of the Pixar properties, because, you know, the originals were so very good, and even Toy Story 1, 2, and 3 were pretty good as a trilogy. But you know you go into this idea that if you keep pumping them out, they lose that mystique, they lose that level. And we saw that kind of with Pixar, where they were on this tear for a very long time, from the original Toy Story all the way up until about Toy Story 3. They basically could do no wrong, almost. And then after that, you started seeing kind of, I wouldn't say soulless, but maybe less you know, put together films and sequels. And then also you have Disney taking their own animation company and basically just modeling them very similar to Pixar, with a different writing team. And people think it's Pixar, but in reality it's Disney Animation Studio, which is a separate studio. I believe Wreck-It Ralph 1 and 2 were both on that. So, you know, they're basically, they're just trying to farm franchises and farm universes. And now that they have inherited all the Fox universes, they immediately want to start releasing films. And this is the mistake they made with Star Wars, is you announced immediately that you were going to release more films with Star Wars, and then you said, "Oh, we're going to do a film every other year." I could see this going a similar way, especially with like the Alien and the Predator franchise, where if they decide to reboot both of them, they say, "Hey, we'll have an Alien film this year, and then a Predator film, and then an Alien film, and then a Predator film, and then an Alien film, and then a Predator film, and then maybe a team up film, and this and that." And that's a terrible idea, because the Predator films are not extremely one note, but they basically have the same kind of premise, with some minor tweaking in the sequels, where the first one, it's in the jungle, he's hunted, the predator's hunting like all these elite commandos and stuff like that. Then in the second one, he's in the city, so okay, you change the setting, but it's still kind of the same idea. And then Predators, which was with Adrian Brody, now you have all these people that are kind of the best of the best in something, and they're all dropped into this game reserve, and they're hunted. Okay, good, good. Again, you're just changing the setting. You can only change the setting so many times before you have to change the story, and that kind of goes the same way with the Alien versus Predator films. Is the first one is like, it's okay, but it's the sequel, Alien versus Predator Requiem, is a god awful piece of shit because they just changed the setting and they added a few little quirks and it didn't work. Um, but you can see the same thing kind of with the Alien franchise. Is the Alien franchise, that very first film that was done by Ridley Scott is this very claustrophobic, horror movie, and then you move into more of an action vibe with Aliens in 1986, and then Alien 3 kind of goes back to the claustrophobic thing, and then Alien Resurrection's kind of just a piece of shit, and then you move through with a few other. Sequels after that, the Prometheus films, Alien Covenant, which again I felt it was kind of like a retread. It really wasn't anything too special. It just they have a lot of those weird looking like little special effects that kind of. It's meant to be kind of this gory, uncomfortable horror film. It's a special effects film. There's really not too much story in Alien Covenant, and then you go forward from that, and if you can only do so many things with the setting, and the alien itself is kind of set in what the lore is. You can tweak it here and there. We've seen it done where they've tweaked the different kinds of aliens you can have in the film, like Queen Alien or the Dog Alien, or stuff like that. But there's only so many little quirks you can have before people get tired of it. And I feel like with both of those franchises, we've seen pretty much everything we can see. And if Disney wants to start pumping these things out year after year, you're going to see the same thing that you saw with Star Wars. And I've said this before. It's called franchise stagnation, because I don't think franchise fatigue actually exists. It's called franchise stagnation because they're not going to put out a superior product. They're going to put out something. They're going to try and serialize it, like what they tried to do with Star Wars and what they've done with Marvel, so that they can put out all these movies every year, so that Disney can essentially own the cinema system. And this is concerning. This is extremely concerning. And I honestly didn't think they would go to this extent when it came to rebooting Fox franchises. I figured they would try to do maybe some of the maybe some of the older ones that hadn't had entries in a very long time or stuff like that. But Alien Covenant only came out a few years ago. The Predator I think came out last year. And then the last Die Hard, I think, was like 4 or 5 years ago. So they're all relatively recent releases for these franchises. And if you're going to reboot them so soon after, again, we don't have any confirmations on actual release dates, but this is not good. This is not good at all for these franchises and for the film industry as a whole, because Disney is going to keep propagating this narrative of continuing to release the same shit we've seen before. And this is what happens, is people are going to stop going to the movies, and people have already stopped going to the movies to a decent amount. Even though we've seen like, oh, this movie made $1 billion, or Avengers Endgame or stuff like that, most people, if there's a new movie that interests them, they'll go see it in the theater. But if it's a sequel, like the seventh or eighth sequel to a film, and they've seen it all before, they're not going to go see it in the theaters. Even people that love to go see Marvel movies, I haven't seen a lot of the most recent ones in theaters. I went to see Endgame, I went to see Infinity War, I didn't go see Ant-Man and the Wasp, I didn't go see, I haven't seen Spider-Man Far From Home, although I might, go see that maybe just, for a cheapo thing in the theater down the road. But there's eventually you get to the point where like, I'll catch it on a streaming service, or I'll catch it on HBO, or I'll catch it whenever it comes out on another service. I don't need to go see it in the theater. And you're going to see diminishing theater numbers for these properties over the next few years because of that kind of like, okay, it's too much, and we're not seeing enough new stuff. You're not giving anybody a draw to the theaters. And it's a problem. It's a legitimate problem, and Disney is going to keep propagating this because they refuse to put out anything original. They refuse to put out anything different. They just want existing franchises that they can milk for as much money as possible. And we even see this with their own franchises. You see the live action remakes. There's rumors right now that not Lion King, Aladdin, the live action Aladdin film, is going to be getting a sequel, a live action sequel. And so now you're going to start seeing those franchises, since many of them have done particularly well, they're going to start greenlighting more and more sequels for that stuff. So we're going to keep seeing that as well. So this is nothing original, and that's really the problem with Hollywood, is that there's no originality left. And any amount of originality that does exist gets buried because they don't think it'll be profitable, because they think that they just want franchises. They want the same thing one after the other after the other. And if they can't do that, literally they would have to be pushed to desperation to publish something original on a AAA level. And that's sad. That's extremely sad. And that's kind of the reason why I really don't enjoy as many films that come out in theaters as I used to, because they don't do many original things anymore. But that's my take on this. I think it's a really bad idea to start rebooting a lot of these classic franchises. But I want to know what your opinion is. Are you a fan of, Alien or Predator or Die Hard? Do you think that these franchises should be rebooted? Do you think they should be left alone? Put your thoughts in the comments. Again, I like to know what you're thinking. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?